From ancient battlefields to futuristic war zones, weapons have been humanity's most relentless creations. They've decided the fates of empires, shaped the course of history, and pushed the boundaries of technology. But behind every blade, bow, and bomb lies a story, a glimpse into the minds of those who crafted them and the warriors who wielded them. Today, we're going on a journey through time to uncover the most powerful weapons of each era, starting from the 1st century. Let's see how blades, fire, and sheer ingenuity shaped the battlefield. Before we start, if you want to help me expand my team and create better content, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks. Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with the Roman legionnaires, their shields locked in an impenetrable wall, their swords gleaming in the sunlight. In their hands is the gladius, a short, double-edged sword with a deadly pointed tip. Developed during the Roman Republic, this weapon was refined over centuries, and by the 1st century AD, it became a symbol of Roman dominance. Gladius wasn't just a tool of war, it was an extension of Rome itself. This compact blade was perfect for close combat in the tightly packed ranks of the Roman military, allowing soldiers to stab and thrust with lethal precision. Its effectiveness wasn't just physical, it was psychological. To Rome's enemies, the sight of glinting gladius blades was a harbinger of conquest. The weapon was simple, efficient, and deadly, a perfect embodiment of Roman engineering and discipline. But as time passed, other cultures developed weapons to challenge Rome's supremacy. And in the 2nd century, one such weapon would emerge, a weapon designed to slice through Roman armor like it was nothing more than cloth. Enter the Dacian falx, a wickedly curved, sickle-like blade that struck fear into the hearts of Roman soldiers. This weapon was no ordinary sword. Its inward curve made it perfect for hooking into armor and delivering devastating, often fatal, blows. The Dacians, fierce warriors from the Carpathian Mountains, used the falx to terrifying effect. Roman commanders, who prided themselves on their legion's superior equipment, quickly realized the threat posed by this brutal weapon. Records from the time describe how the falx could slice through the larica segmentata, Rome's iconic segmented armor, like a knife through butter. This deadly innovation forced the Romans to adapt their armor, reinforcing helmets with crossbars to counteract the falx's immense cutting power. But the falx was more than just a weapon. It was a testament to the Dacians' resilience, their ability to adapt and fight back against one of the greatest empires in history. And just when Rome thought they'd seen it all, the 3rd century would bring another challenger to their supremacy, a weapon as beautiful as it was deadly. In the rugged lands of the Iberian Peninsula, another blade took shape, the falcata. With its distinct curved edge and razor-sharp point, the falcata was a masterpiece of craftsmanship and a nightmare for Rome's legions. Unlike the falx, this sword was versatile, perfect for both hacking and thrusting. What made the falcata even more fearsome was the quality of the iron used in its construction. Iberian blacksmiths were masters of their craft, creating a weapon so strong and sharp that even the mighty Romans hesitated to face it. The falcata wasn't just a tool for war, it was a symbol of Iberian pride and defiance. Despite its effectiveness, the falcata never gained the widespread recognition it deserved. Still, its legacy lives on as one of the most formidable weapons of its time. While Rome and its challengers clashed in Europe, across the Atlantic, the Aztecs were perfecting a weapon that could rival any sword or axe of the Old World, the macuahuitl. At first glance, it might seem simple, a wooden club with sharp obsidian blades embedded along its edges. But don't be fooled, this was no ordinary weapon. The obsidian, a volcanic glass sharper than steel, made the macuahuitl devastating in the hands of a trained warrior. Aztec warriors used it with precision, delivering strikes that could maim or kill with ease. Some legends even claim the macuahuitl was capable of decapitating a horse in one blow. Though, thankfully for the horses, the Aztecs didn't encounter them until the Spanish arrived. But the macuahuitl wasn't just a tool for killing. For the Aztecs, warfare was deeply tied to their religion, Capturing enemies alive for ritual sacrifice was often the ultimate goal, making the macuahuitl not only a weapon of war, but also a means of honoring the gods. As the 4th century came to a close, humanity's ability to craft weapons showed no sign of slowing. The age of blades was far from over, but on the horizon loomed a new era, one where weapons could kill from a distance, long before their wielders ever came face to face with their enemies. By the 5th century, the ancient world had seen countless battles, each more brutal than the last. But even among the countless armies and warriors that roamed the land, few struck as much fear into the hearts of their enemies as the Huns. Masters of mounted warfare, the Huns wielded a weapon that would come to define their dominance, the recurve bow. This wasn't just any bow. Its curved design stored immense energy, allowing it to deliver arrows with far greater force than the traditional longbows or flatbows of earlier centuries. And its compact size made it perfect for use on horseback, giving the Huns unmatched mobility on the battlefield. Imagine facing a Hun raiding party. Before you could even draw your sword, their arrows would rain down on you, piercing armor and shields with terrifying ease. The speed and precision of the recurve bow allowed the Huns to attack and retreat in seamless waves, keeping their enemies off balance and ensuring their victories. But it wasn't just the bow's design that made it deadly. It was the skill of those who wielded it. The Huns trained with their bows from childhood, perfecting the art of shooting while galloping at full speed. Their ability to shoot with precision from horseback turned them into a whirlwind of destruction, leaving entire armies in chaos. The recurve bow wasn't just a weapon, it was the embodiment of the Huns' nomadic lifestyle, a tool perfectly suited to their needs and tactics. It allowed them to dominate vast swathes of territory, spreading fear across Europe and Asia. And as history shows us, when a weapon is this effective, its influence doesn't fade quickly. The legacy of the recurve bow would echo for centuries in the weapons of other nomadic cultures and empires. But as the 5th century gave way to the 6th, another weapon was waiting in the wings, one that would take the idea of hand-to-hand combat to brutal new heights. The Roman Empire had seen its glory days, but its legacy endured, especially in its weapons. In the 6th century, one such weapon, the spatha, rose to prominence, a sword that took the best of Roman ingenuity and adapted it for a changing battlefield. The spatha was longer and heavier than the gladius, giving it the reach needed for cavalry and heavy infantry. This wasn't a weapon for quick, close-quarters stabs. It was made for powerful, sweeping strikes, capable of cutting down enemies with a single swing. Adopted from the Celtic tribes, the spatha proved its worth in the hands of mounted soldiers, making them even deadlier as they charged into enemy lines. Its longer blade wasn't just functional. It symbolized the evolving nature of warfare as battles shifted from tightly packed formations to more mobile and flexible strategies. Though the Roman Empire's days were numbered, the spatha showed that their influence on the art of war was far from over. This weapon would inspire countless designs in the centuries to come, leaving its mark on history. And speaking of leaving a mark, the next century's weapon would bring literal fire to the battlefield, a force as uncontrollable as the tides. Imagine the horror of watching flames that wouldn't extinguish, no matter how much water you threw at them. This was the terror of Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's secret weapon. Developed in the 7th century, it was a substance so volatile and deadly that its formula has been lost to history. Greek fire wasn't just a weapon, it was a psychological attack. Used primarily in naval battles, it was launched at enemy ships through primitive flamethrowers or hurled in ceramic grenades. The fire clung to anything it touched, wood, flesh, or sails, burning relentlessly. The Byzantines guarded the recipe like a treasure, and for good reason. It gave them a decisive edge in countless conflicts, keeping their empire alive in the face of relentless threats. To their enemies, Greek fire was more than a weapon. It was an unstoppable force, a symbol of divine wrath. As terrifying as Greek fire was, it had a limitation. it was only effective at close range. But in the next century, a weapon emerged that could reach farther and deliver death with precision and grace. In the 8th century, Japan introduced a weapon as beautiful as it was deadly, the naginata. This polearm, essentially a curved blade attached to a long staff, became a staple of samurai warfare. The naginata offered versatility. Its long reach made it perfect for foot soldiers to fight against cavalry, while its sharp blade allowed for devastating slashes and thrusts. Samurai used it to cleave through armor, while warrior women, the onabugeisha, wielded it with incredible skill to protect their homes and families. But the naginata wasn't just a tool of war, it was deeply tied to Japanese culture and tradition. Mastering it required discipline and precision, and its use became an art form practiced in schools of martial arts that still exist today. The naginata's elegance was matched only by its lethality, but it was far from the only iconic weapon of its time. Across the seas, the Vikings were forging a weapon designed for brute force, a weapon as relentless as the warriors who wielded it. Few cultures are as synonymous with warfare as the Vikings, and the Dan axe was one of their most feared weapons. This large, single-bladed axe was the ultimate tool for brutal combat, capable of cutting through armor and shields with terrifying efficiency. The Dan axe wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. Its broad blade and long handle made it a symbol of status among Viking warriors, with some versions reaching nearly 6 feet in length. In the hands of a skilled berserker, it was a force of nature, capable of cleaving through multiple enemies with a single swing. The thin edge of the blade, crafted from hardened steel, ensured it could deliver devastating strikes. But the Dan axe wasn't just about power, it was about intimidation. Seeing a Viking warrior charging at you with one of these in hand was enough to break the morale of even the most disciplined troops. As devastating as the Dan axe was, it had one flaw: it required close combat. But the next century would introduce a weapon that brought fire and destruction from a distance, forever changing the art of war. The 11th century saw a pivotal moment in the evolution of gunpowder weapons with the invention of the fire lance. This was no ordinary spear. Imagine a polearm with a gunpowder-filled tube attached to its shaft, capable of spewing flames, smoke, and shrapnel into the faces of its enemies. It was as if someone had taken the chaos of a firework and weaponized it. The fire lance wasn't just a weapon, it was a show of terrifying ingenuity. When the gunpowder ignited, it sent a blast of pellets, flames, and debris hurtling toward its target. It wasn't the most accurate weapon, nor was it effective beyond close range, but its psychological impact was undeniable. The sight of flames erupting from a warrior's weapon was enough to send enemies fleeing. The fire lance was the precursor to many gunpowder weapons that would come after it. It marked the beginning of an age where fire and steel would dominate the battlefield, paving the way for even more devastating innovations. As impressive as the fire lance was, the 12th century would introduce a weapon capable of breaking not just armies, but entire fortresses. Siege warfare was a grueling affair, but the counterweight trebuchet changed the game entirely. This massive siege engine harnessed the power of physics to launch enormous projectiles with devastating force. Unlike earlier catapults, the counterweight trebuchet used a weighted arm to hurl stones, fireballs, or even rotting carcasses over castle walls. The impact wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Imagine watching your fortress crumble under a relentless barrage, knowing there was no escape. What made the trebuchet truly remarkable was its precision. Skilled crews could adjust the weight and angle to target specific sections of a wall or fortress, making it a nightmare for defenders. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of engineering mastery. But as effective as the trebuchet was, it was only a matter of time before gunpowder would take center stage. The 13th century would see China once again revolutionize warfare with weapons that brought fire and destruction on an unprecedented scale. In the 13th century, Chinese inventors took their knowledge of gunpowder to new heights with rocket launchers like the Nest of Bees. These were some of the earliest examples of multi-rocket systems, designed to overwhelm enemies with sheer firepower. The nest of bees, a hexagonal launcher filled with rocket-propelled arrows, was terrifyingly effective. When fired, it unleashed a swarm of flaming projectiles, raining destruction over a wide area. The weapon wasn't just deadly, it was demoralizing. The sound of rockets screaming through the air and the chaos they caused left enemy forces in disarray. These innovations were the pinnacle of Chinese ingenuity during this era. They demonstrated how gunpowder could be used not just for single-shot weapons, but for devastating volleys that changed the nature of battlefield tactics. While China's rockets lit up the sky, Europe was perfecting a simpler, but no less deadly weapon. A weapon that would dominate battlefields for over a century. In the 14th century, the English longbow emerged as one of the deadliest weapons of its time. Standing over 6 feet tall, this weapon was deceptively simple but devastatingly effective in the hands of a skilled archer. The longbow's range and power were unmatched. A trained archer could fire up to 12 arrows per minute, each capable of piercing armor and causing fatal wounds. During battles like Agincourt in the 100 Years' War, English longbowmen decimated French forces, even against overwhelming odds. But the longbow wasn't just about its physical power. It symbolized discipline and training, as mastering the weapon required years of practice. It became the backbone of English and Welsh military strategy, ensuring their dominance on the battlefield for generations. As effective as the longbow was, it had a limitation. It required immense skill. The 15th century, however, would introduce a weapon that anyone could use, leveling the playing field and forever changing the face of war. The crossbow was not a new invention by the 15th century, but it had reached near perfection in its design. Unlike the longbow, the crossbow required no years of training to master. Point, aim, and pull the trigger. Anyone could wield it with deadly accuracy. The crossbow's ability to fire heavy bolts with precision made it a formidable weapon against armored knights. At close range, it could pierce plate armor, rendering even the most well-equipped warriors vulnerable. Its ease of use allowed armies to field vast numbers of crossbowmen, turning untrained recruits into effective killers. The crossbow represented a shift in warfare, a move away from the elite warrior class toward a more democratic and brutal form of combat. It wasn't about skill anymore, it was about firepower. But even as the crossbow revolutionized the battlefield, it paved the way for something even more devastating. The 16th century would see the birth of firearms, and the age of gunpowder would truly begin. By the 16th century, the age of knights and armor was coming to an end. The weapon responsible for this seismic shift was the infantry musket, a firearm that made warfare deadlier and more impersonal than ever before. Unlike the crossbow, the musket didn't just pierce armor, it obliterated it. A single iron ball fired from its smoothbore barrel could shatter bone and punch through even the strongest plate armor. The musket was slow to load and not very accurate, but it didn't need to be. Battles became less about precision and more about volleys of musket fire, creating devastating kill zones. This wasn't just a technological change, it was a cultural one. The musket democratized death. A peasant with minimal training could now kill a nobleman in full armor from a distance. The battlefield had shifted, and the age of heavily armored knights was over. But even as the musket changed warfare forever, it was still slow and cumbersome. The 17th century would solve that problem, creating firearms that were faster, more reliable, and deadlier. The flintlock mechanism was a game changer in the 17th century. While early firearms relied on slow and unreliable matchlocks or wheel locks, the flintlock simplified and sped up the process of firing, making muskets and pistols more efficient and practical. The genius of the flintlock was its simplicity. A piece of flint struck a steel plate, creating a spark that ignited the gunpowder in the firing pan. This mechanism was reliable, easy to produce, and adaptable, leading to the widespread adoption of flintlock muskets and pistols across Europe. Flintlocks weren't just tools of war, they became symbols of power and prestige. Duels, pirate skirmishes, and battlefield tactics of the time all revolved around these weapons. They were quicker to load, easier to use, and deadlier than anything that had come before. But as effective as flintlocks were, there was one problem they couldn't solve: reloading in the heat of battle. Enter the 18th century, and a weapon that turned this disadvantage into a deadly strength. When reloading your musket wasn't an option, soldiers of the 18th century had a solution: the sword bayonet. This ingenious attachment turned a firearm into a melee weapon, ensuring that soldiers were never defenseless, even when out of ammunition. The sword bayonet was more than just a sharp blade attached to a musket. It was a versatile tool, capable of stabbing, slashing, and even parrying. In close combat, where muskets were often unwieldy, the bayonet gave soldiers the edge they needed to survive. This weapon was instrumental during the Napoleonic Wars, where armies often engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The combination of musket fire and bayonet charges turned battlefields into blood-soaked arenas, where discipline and training determined survival. But while the sword bayonet gave soldiers an edge in close combat, the 19th century would take warfare to an entirely new level, one where machines did the killing. The 19th century was the era of industrialization, and warfare was no exception. The invention of automatic firearms like the Gatling gun and later the Maxim machine gun revolutionized combat by introducing unprecedented firepower. The Gatling gun, invented in 1862, was the first crank-operated machine gun. It could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, mowing down waves of enemies with terrifying efficiency. But it was the Maxim gun, introduced in 1884, that truly changed the game. It was the first fully automatic firearm, capable of firing as long as the trigger was held down. These weapons transformed the battlefield, making mass casualties the norm. They were instrumental in conflicts like the American Civil War and the colonial wars of the late 19th century, where they decimated traditional infantry formations. The Maxim gun was a precursor to the horrors of modern warfare, where one soldier with an automatic weapon could hold back an entire army. And as the 20th century loomed, humanity would create weapons capable of not just destroying armies, but entire cities. In the 21st century, warfare has entered a new age with the rise of drones and artificial intelligence. These weapons promise precision and efficiency, but they also raise ethical and existential questions about the future of conflict. Drones, or unmanned aerial vehicles, have redefined modern combat. They can surveil, strike, and even assassinate targets from thousands of miles away, all without risking human lives on the operator's side. This has made them a preferred tool for militaries worldwide. But drones are just the beginning. AI is being integrated into autonomous weapon systems, allowing machines to make life and death decisions on the battlefield. Proponents argue this reduces human error and saves lives, but critics warn of a dystopian future where wars are waged by unfeeling machines. Imagine an AI system analyzing battle scenarios and deploying strikes faster than any human could react. Now imagine that same system making decisions about nuclear arsenals. The potential for catastrophe is staggering as humanity cedes control of its deadliest weapons to algorithms. The rise of drones and AI signals a shift in warfare, one where technology could outpace human oversight. The question remains, will these advancements protect humanity or doom it? As we stand at the crossroads of innovation and destruction, the question isn't if humanity will create new weapons, but what form they will take. From the dawn of history, each new breakthrough has reshaped warfare, and the future promises no exceptions. One possibility lies in directed energy weapons, tools of war that sound more like science fiction than reality. These include laser systems capable of precision strikes at the speed of light, neutralizing drones, missiles, or even enemy forces with pinpoint accuracy. The technology already exists in experimental forms, with militaries around the world racing to make it battlefield ready. But lasers are just the beginning. Imagine hypersonic weapons that travel 5 to 10 times the speed of sound, making them nearly impossible to detect or intercept. These weapons could deliver devastating strikes in mere moments, rendering traditional defense systems obsolete. The development of hypersonic missiles is already underway, and they may redefine global power balances in the near future. The next frontier might not even involve traditional weaponry. Biological and cyber warfare could take center stage. With advancements in synthetic biology, engineered pathogens might be tailored to target specific populations, leaving others unharmed. On the cyber front, hacking into critical infrastructure, power grids, water supplies, or communication networks could bring nations to their knees without a single bullet being fired. And then there's the possibility of autonomous swarms, networks of small, AI-driven drones acting together like a colony of ants. These swarms could overwhelm defenses, gather intelligence, and execute coordinated attacks without human intervention. The thought of thousands of drones converging on a target is as mesmerizing as it is terrifying. But perhaps the most unsettling prospect is the fusion of human and machine. Advances in brain-computer interfaces could turn soldiers into literal superhumans, capable of controlling weapon systems with their thoughts. Imagine armies of enhanced soldiers, connected to each other and their weapons through neural links, moving and reacting as one seamless unit. The weapons of the future aren't just about destruction, they're about control. Whether it's through lasers, AI swarms, or engineered viruses, the next generation of weaponry will challenge not just our notions of warfare, but of humanity itself. The question isn't just what we can build, but whether we're ready for the consequences. Weapons have always been a double-edged sword, a testament to humanity's ingenuity and its capacity for destruction. From the glinting blades of ancient warriors to the silent hum of AI-driven drones, each innovation has reshaped not only the battlefield, but the world itself. But as we look to the future, one question remains. Will we continue down this path of escalating destruction, or will we find a way to wield our creativity for peace? History has shown us the power of our choices. Now it's up to us to decide what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the weapons that shaped history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future explorations into the past, present, and future.